I have been a relationship coach for over 8 years, and I helped hundreds of couples save their marriages, reignite the passion, and restore intimacy. Today, I'm going to compress 8 years of relationship knowledge into this one video, and it all starts with lesson number 1. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like the spark in your relationship has faded? Like, you're together, but something feels off. Well, you're not alone. After working with hundreds of couples over the years, I found that if you want to keep the passion alive in your relationship, you must understand one key concept, and that is polarity. You see, polarity is the dynamic balance between masculine and feminine energies within you and the relationship. Energies that exist in every one of us regardless of gender. And when these energies are balanced within you, the spark, the attraction, and the passion in your relationship will be strong. But when there's imbalance within you, that balance fades within your relationship and trouble begins. And the sad part is, most couples don't even realize when this is happening because work, stress, routines, life, it all gets in the way. And before you know it, you're no longer lovers but mere roommates. And when the polarity fades, attraction fades too. And suddenly, the passion once defined your relationship is gone. And that passion is replaced by frustration. But the good news is, you can restore polarity. You can reignite the spark if you put in the work. Now, if you're a married man and you want to reignite love with your partner, click the link in the description below and watch my free masterclass and start reigniting the passion in 9 weeks or less. So, what happens when polarity doesn't just fade, but is completely reversed? That's when things get very complicated. You know how men and women have their own unique role and responsibilities in a relationship? Well, reverse polarity is when those natural feminine and masculine roles are being flipped. Suddenly, the man becomes more passive, leaving the woman to take the leadership role, and this creates confusion and frustration. The man feels emasculated as he doesn't have control, while the woman feels overwhelmed having to handle all the responsibilities. It's a slow, toxic shift that often goes unnoticed until it's too late. And when this is left unchecked, it results in resentment, power struggles, and eventually a loss of attraction. And in most cases, this dynamic shift is the main reason behind the separation and divorce. But it doesn't have to be that way. Reverse polarity can be fixed. With awareness and intentional effort, you can bring your relationship back into balance. But first, you need to start recognizing what those imbalances are. For men who are predominantly masculine, it's all about stepping back into your masculine being, your masculine energy, being the leader and taking more responsibility. For women who are predominantly feminine, it's all about rediscovering your feminine essence. But there's one key element that's crucial for restoring polarity in your relationship, and that is what we're going to talk about next. Did you know that too much closeness can actually kill the passion in your relationship? Don't get me wrong, not enough closeness can actually do the same thing. So finding the balance between space and closeness is key. Think of your relationship like building a house. The pillars of the house must be close enough to support the roof, but just far enough apart to give it stability. Because when there's too much closeness, you start to feel like roommates instead of lovers. In contrast, too much distance creates emotional separation, making you feel like strangers under the same roof. And when the balance is off, the result is emotional suffocation on one end and disconnection on the other, both equally damaging to you and your relationship. So how do you find the right balance? Simple. Make an intentional effort to spend time apart, have a separate hobby, go on separate trips, Have separate social activities and friends. When you give each other space, your desire has room to breathe. And for you to maintain that balance, it's equally important to spend quality time together. And no, things like watching Netflix together does not count as quality time. But if you want to attain real closeness, you have to start doing things together. Go on new adventures together, serve the world together, learn new things together. But this balance alone won't fully reignite the passion. There's one more ingredient that ties it all together, and that is physical intimacy. And without it, even closeness won't last. Now, I know sex isn't everything in a relationship, but without physical intimacy, you're at risk of losing the deeper connection that keeps every relationship alive. After some time, many couples start prioritizing sex less. They think, we're fine without it. We have emotional intimacy. But the ugly truth is, without regular physical connection, you're setting your relationship up for failure. And when your physical intimacy starts to fade, so does emotional intimacy. You stop feeling like lovers, and before you know it, you're just co-parents. And the worst part is, this happens slowly, almost without you noticing. Days turns into weeks, and weeks turns into months. And suddenly, you realize that you barely touch each other anymore, but you can bring the spark back. If you make physical intimacy a priority, that is the first step to reconnect on a deeper level. It's not just about the sex. It's about the connection that sex brings. Physical intimacy, when done right, keeps your relationship exciting and alive. It's what separates you from being just housemates. It's a reminder that you're still lovers. But while physical intimacy is essential to keeping the spark alive, emotional intimacy is just as important. If you don't have it, the physical side won't last long. Emotional connection is what makes you feel truly seen and understood by your partner. But here's where the problem lies. Society tells men that vulnerability is a weakness. So instead of opening up, most men shut down, keeping their emotions to themselves. This emotional distance leads to resentment, because without vulnerability, there's no true connection. Yeah, you might talk to your partner, but you're not actually sharing deeply with one another. And the result is, partner starts to drift apart. Emotional walls go up and communication becomes shallow. It's as if you're living two separate lives under the same roof, and isn't that a terrible thing? But there's a way to break this cycle. True vulnerability. Emotional intimacy starts when you're willing to show up as your true self, flaws and everything. And you can start small. Share how you're feeling, even if it's uncomfortable. Use I statements like, I am feeling frustrated. I am scared about where we're going. This creates a space for connection and not blame. But emotional intimacy is only a piece of the puzzle. To truly deepen your connection, you need to connect on a spiritual level as well. What if I told you that a relationship could be your path to a spiritual awakening? Yes, physical and emotional intimacy are important, but to take your connection to the next level, you need to tap into something deeper. Spiritual intimacy. Spiritual intimacy isn't something most couples even think about, but it's the foundation of the deepest, most meaningful relationships that I ever seen. It's about connecting on a soul level. But the problem is, most couples never reach this level because they're too focused on the surface level issues like money, stress, day-to-day responsibilities, you name it. These things are distracting from the deeper connection waiting to be explored. And when you're consumed and caught up in external stressors, you lose sight of the bigger picture. You miss out on the opportunity to heal past wounds and grow together spiritually. But unlike popular belief, spiritual intimacy isn't far-fetched. It can actually be cultivated. It's about being fully present with one another, free from distractions. So leave your phone, aside, start practicing mindfulness together, whether it's meditation, prayer, or simply being still in nature. When you cultivate spiritual intimacy, you start to feel and understand your partner's energy in a new way. You recognize how your energies are interacting. That connection goes deeper than any physical or emotional bond. But even with spiritual connection, conflict is unavoidable, and how you handle it will determine whether your relationship becomes stronger or weaker. The truth is, conflict is unavoidable, but the way you handle it, that's what will either bring you closer or drive you further apart. Most couples handle conflict poorly. They either avoid it entirely or fight to win. But if you're always trying to be right, you're doing it wrong, and you're not focused on being connected. Poor communication during conflicts lead to resentment and distance, and without the right tools, minor disagreement can develop into full-blown emotional disconnect. Without a system in place for resolving conflict, you find yourself stuck in a loop of arguments, and soon you'll both be walking on eggshells, afraid to speak your truth because the fights are just too overwhelming. But here's the secret: conscious communication can turn conflict into opportunity, a chance to grow. Now, this is not about avoiding arguments, but learning to handle them with empathy and awareness. Start by listening to your partner and mirror back what they said to you. And instead of reacting, use I statements like, "I feel upset when," instead of "you always make me feel upset." This removes the blame and invites a more open response from your partner. When you practice conscious communication, you're not fighting against each other. You're fighting to understand each other. This builds trust and empathy and ultimately brings you closer. Now you're probably wondering, but it takes both parties to fix the relationship. Actually, it doesn't. And I'll show you in my final lesson how one person can shift the entire dynamic. I'm sure you heard the saying, it takes two to fix a relationship, right? Well, what if I told you that's not entirely true? Most people think both partners need to be fully committed to make changes in a relationship, but the reality is, it only takes one person to shift the dynamic. Waiting for your partner to change or get on board leaves you feeling stuck. You become powerless, frustrated, and it might feel like nothing is moving forward. But if I'm being honest with you, you have the power to make the change, because what happens is when one person starts working on themselves, it naturally influences the whole relationship. I've seen this time and time again with my clients. One person starts to shift, whether it's stepping into their masculine energy or rediscovering the feminine essence, and the entire relationship dynamic changes. You see, relationships are like a dance. When one person changes their step, the other person has no choice but to respond differently. And you don't need to push or force your partner to change. Your energy will naturally inspire them to shift. So are you ready to be the one that makes that change? The one who shifts the energy in your relationship? Because your relationship can change today. It can start with just one person. Will that person be you? If you found this video helpful, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe if you want more insights on how to improve your relationship, and drop a comment below sharing your experience. I would love to hear your story. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Blessings.